Hello and welcome to this special edition of Eye on St. Lucie. In this edition, we'll have an opportunity to speak with Kathryn Hensley, School Board Vice Chair from District 4. Welcome.
Thank you.
So excited to have you here today. Let's start by just having you introduce yourself to our viewers.
I'm Kathryn Hensley. I have lived in St. Lucie County for a very long time. Mother of 3 children who have all graduated from our public schools and gone on to other things, all live in Gainesville. And so we have been, my husband and I have been deeply involved with almost everything going on in St. Lucie County since we moved here from the Oregon coast.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Talk about a little bit more about some of those community agencies that you're involved with outside of your job as a school board member.
I have about 22, I think, right now.
Wow.
Committees, subcommittees, and boards that I work with.
Okay.
Most of them are local, some are regional, a couple are statewide. Transportation, health, education, child welfare, foster care. You know, if I'm not on it, let me know and I'll try to be there.
Wonderful. And these agencies really advocate for children?
It is actually a bigger picture than just children.
Okay.
It's the future of the children.
Wonderful.
When we put I put a personal 20-year plan together.
Okay.
About what we were going to do to change the generational poverty in St. Lucie County and help every child achieve at a much higher level than the expectation had been. So that means I had to deal with affordable housing. I need to deal with appropriate health care. Because if the parents are not well, then the children tend to be not well also. So I was on a state group for kid care, and that helped get all of our kids into appropriate health care.
Okay.
And dealing with transportation, because we found that a lot of people couldn't get where they need to be because they couldn't get there. They didn't have transportation. So we need to sit on the board to help with transportation.
Wonderful.
So we could do some mass transit.
Wonderful.
And so all of it works together for the future of our kids and families.
And it sounds like not just the education side, but the whole child and really the whole family, the whole community.
The whole community.
Having an impact.
My philosophy would be you put the child in the middle of the table and decide what that family needs for that child to be successful, and then let's make it happen.
Wonderful. What drives your passion to serve the boys and girls?
I think it is the opportunity to actually create things for kids, opportunities for kids that never existed here before. And if we can put things together, which we have, there's still some way to go, but we have put some things together that give us, our kids, opportunities that some of them don't exist anywhere else in the state, if not even beyond. Our Children's Services Council is in its 30th year. We put that on the ballot. I was part of the Dog and Pony Show to talk why that was important. So we have been able to use that agency to build coalitions and change the needle significantly for individual children. So we have changed our teen pregnancy rate from an outrageously high number to a very low number. Our children without any insurance now went from 17.8% down to less than 3%. So we've been able to move the needle for the benefit of our kids, which in the future, of course, means the benefit of our community as a whole.
Wonderful. In addition to those, can you think of some other specific opportunities that the work that you've done have helped created for our students?
Well, we started the Downtown Farmers Market in January of '97, and part of the bylaws that 2 of us wrote was that kids from any of our ag-based programs or community garden programs could vend for free. And that helped quite a bit because that was pretty interesting. That we had quite a few students, especially 4-H kids.
Wonderful.
Who go down and do that. We also, the school district has property. We have a farm, a section of land that was not necessarily being used to its best ability. So over about 5 years, we traded leases with the University of Florida, and then our students have the access to that. And so we have students working at USDA, at University of Florida, with extension, our more robust 4-H program. We also found out that Dr. Pomponi from Harbor Branch called me one day, and they were going to sell off Harbor Branch for condos. So we had lunch and divided up the call list. And part of the pledge for the school district was that we would have a campus there that was tied to the science of Harbor Branch. And that's given our students a lot of opportunities to work with internationally known scientists. So it's been very exciting to take a problem and say, okay, how can we resolve this and how does it work for the benefit of my community, which means it's for the benefit of my kids.
Wow, that is quite a list, and really those programs are still continuing today. And so when you talk about the Harbor Branch, you're talking about the Marine Oceanographic
Correct.
Academy
Yes.
through Fort Pierce Westwood, now Magnet School.
Yes.
That is wonderful. And I know the Ag program has even extended down into some of our middle schools.
Correct.
Are starting to get involved in that as well.
So it's really quite fun. We had some issues on opportunities, I should say, for our vet tech program. And we couldn't get what we needed, so we went to St. Petersburg College. And they actually, we have a vet tech program that's at Westwood. And we also I had the opportunity to go to Gainesville and talk to the dean of the vet school. So we still have some opportunities there. So we're not finished yet. There are still opportunities to be explored and partnerships to be had, but we have come farther than anybody gave us credit for.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, I can't even imagine what a day in the life of Kathryn Hensley is. You must be just out and about and involved in so many different things.
It is so fun. I get to work with some of the best people you could meet anywhere. And sometimes it's a challenge, but it can be defeating if you let it be, but it can be something that you do a little critical thinking on and see what could we do about that? How could we facilitate that? And we've been able to, as a community, come together on many, many issues. Economic development is often seated in an agency in other counties. Here is a lot of it is about the education that's going on in the public schools and the pathways that have been created for kids that traditionally wouldn't have seen those pathways exist.
That's wonderful. Sounds like a lot of the work that you do is really bridging that gap between the education and community partners, and starting that dialogue, and it's amazing the great things that have come out of that.
Well, I think our job as an elected official is we are not the experts in almost anything, right? We are the community liaisons. So when we made the family decision that I was going to run for office the first time, it was the understanding that I would be as many places as I could possibly be. So I started going to meetings where I wasn't invited because I needed to talk to those people. Sure. I needed to see those people, meet those people. So being the community liaison and trying to help facilitate creating a larger network in a community that has a high poverty rate has been more energizing than frustrating.
Wonderful.
It's absolutely exciting every day to think, okay, here's another issue that we need to tackle. Who do we need to talk to? Have a lot of coffees.
Wonderful. Well, I know you are a problem solver, you're a doer, and it's evident with all of these accomplishments. Let's shift gears a little bit into the school district. What are some school district accomplishments that you're particularly proud of?
Well, we are an A district, whether the state recognizes it or not. Because if we got to use one of the schools that we run, we would have been an A district for years. I don't believe in school grades. I don't believe in district grades, but that's the lay of the land. It's been around for 20 years. And it is a talking point for economic development and for Chamber of Commerce issues. So, but we are an A district. And the graduation rate just tickles me to death. Years ago, it was, my opinion was what was going on was not appropriate because it didn't address the needs of individual children or all children. And there needed to be a pathway to rectify that. So looking at the graduation rates from years ago, it was obvious that there were perceived important kids and kids that were not. And what has been able to happen in this district has shown that every child is important, and every child should have what they need. So when we became the Kids at Hope, we had discussion at Children's Services Council about the Kids at Hope initiative, and what that meant is, you don't build a plan on hope and wishes, right? But if children do not have hope, they will not have a plan. So we decided that we need to front load the roundtable to be able to do some training and bring that in. And then we did training as a district. Another thing we need to tackle, I sat on the New Horizons board and for a long time, and I was president of the board for Hibiscus Children. We had a critical care component. Was that we had children that were in trauma, but we didn't have a pathway to address that trauma. We didn't know how to address that trauma. So the decision of the board to do something with trauma-informed care was pretty interesting. Children's Services Council, we decided many years ago that was our gap. And so we started putting money, renegotiated contracts, did some things like that to try to put money in. And with early learning, they're doing training with that also. So the Kids at Hope discussion pointed to the fact that some of these children had so much trauma that there was no way to give them hope at this point. How do we tackle that? Who needs to do that job? Where's the funding coming from? And so it's all about collaboration. And being able to do that, I think, has helped our district and our individual kids be more successful than their parents probably thought they could be.
That's wonderful. You know, you mentioned Kids at Hope, and one of the attributes of that really is helping kids to see what their future could be.
Correct.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's so important for them to see that, you know, there's a lot of things beyond school, and so these are the doors that can open up.
So telling somebody from the Department of Education a few years ago that we don't deal with kids at risk, that's not the terminology.
Right.
We deal with children that need more hope. And our terminology reflects that. And so we started doing it at the beginning of every board meeting, because that is to, you know, I guess ratify that this is still our focus. And then we started doing some things like having kids perform at the beginning of the meetings, and then recognizing staff and community. That gives, for me, it gives the public our focus. Our focus is on children, our wonderful staff, and then we get down to the business meeting. But it's important that the public, when they come to the meeting or when they see it on TV, they understand what our priorities are. And our priorities have served this community well. So I think because of what's gone on in the school system, our unemployment rate is like 3.2%, right? Instead of 14.8%, which we had a plan for as a community, is how to address that. Well, that worked. Okay, what's the next plan? And so we did a thing many years ago, probably 94 maybe, called Vision St. Lucie by the Chamber of Commerce. And I was a president of the League of Women Voters. And we put together a plan, a 20-year plan, what it's going to look like. Well, we revisited that a few years ago. And the progress that has been made is pretty fascinating. And some of that stuff doesn't apply anymore, right? So my 20-year plan that I had put together for myself got significantly disrupted with the, they call it the recession, I'll call it the depression that we had for years, because that took a lot of things off the table. And we didn't slide back, but we didn't go forward like I had hoped we would go forward. But now we're picking up speed. So that's my challenge now, is to make sure that the things that had not been accomplished during that downturn, that we can accomplish in the next very short period of time, and change the demographics of this community, change the poverty level, change the way people talk to each other, the way people interact with each other, through building those networks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. What do you see on the horizon as a challenge for public education?
The challenge goes back to 1983, when they did a study about a nation at risk, which was all bogus numbers, and they admitted in '85 that they made it up. But some people still use that to talk about how public schools are not doing a good job. And that is, of course, not really true. It never has been true. So the challenge constantly is the privatization of public schools. What often happens with any privatization is that you have winners and losers. And the losers will be the kids who need us the most. And that tilts the scale significantly. That could potentially take away those opportunities that we've been able to put in place. So the charter movement, if they were more accountable, is one issue. Vouchers without any regulation or control, and without the kids getting what they need, that's an issue. Funding is always going to be an issue, and the more they divert, we don't have control over our finances. They come from the state. They set our millage. So the money that comes to us, the more strings that they put on there, that makes it harder to do what we need to do for our kids. My first year on the school board, we had less than half a page of state mandates. Now it's literally pages of state mandates. We've been able to be very nimble and making sure that we could go forward, even with the obstacles they try to put in our way. But as you know, we're very focused, and being a mission-focused person, okay, this could be an obstacle or this could be an opportunity, and how do we address it? So, but the issues are still going to be the same, I think, as we go forward. It's still going to be the privatization of public education, prisons, whatever it might be. It is the privatization. And by looking at the statistics and reading a lot of historical stuff way back, privatization as a rule has not worked well unless you have a really true public-private understanding, partnership, MOUs, all that kind of stuff. So the more things appear to get in our way, the more we need to build those relationships.
What are some things you're doing in the area to, help the community understand that, and even work with the state legislature?
Well, I go to Tallahassee. Yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I do go to Tallahassee. We started, I think 15 years ago, a multi-county work group to share best practices.
Okay.
That at that time that had to do mostly with construction, but now we meet and talk about issues. And so we have been able for several years now to try to have our issues become the state issues for School Board Association and Superintendent Association. This year we know that the push for early learning is a big deal.
Okay.
And that impacts those kids' lives forever. So the earlier we can get them, the better. Saves money. We have numbers that show that it saves money. We did some study during the children's movement when we were doing starting that up. We had actual numbers. We could show the return on investment, and we compared that at that time with the incarceration of kids, which is abhorrent. So our work group, now early learning is one of our priorities. We took it to our consortium of school boards. That became their priority, and now it is the priority of the State School Board Association. So I got to meet with people that I know are traditionally champions. A couple of the young representatives up there used to be part of the children's movement, so I know them. And so we have some significant movement because we actually have some champions now, and we can show that one of the senators didn't understand why a K-12 person was interested in early learning. So I had the opportunity to explain that. So it was a teaching moment about why it's important to K-12 people.
Absolutely.
That early learning is part of that system. And with the nurturing piece and all those discussions. So I do have a very interesting time. And I've been around longer than a lot of people in the state. So the legislators are fairly new, a lot of them. And let's assume that they just don't have the context. So our job, my job when I go up there, is to help them have a bigger picture so that when they're seeing something, they have either a way to ask more questions or they actually have an understanding of what that actually means. And it doesn't always go the way I would like, but I want them to make sure that they know that there's always an avenue, whether I disagree with them or agree with them, there's always an avenue for statistics and information.
Right, making sure they have that, that historical context. Very good. What are your goals for this calendar year?
For this calendar year? A continuation. First of all, I have to get reelected.
Okay.
But a continuation of what is moving forward. I'm the vice chair of our county's Cultural Alliance, which is a new organization. We're tying that now with students, Lindsay School of the Arts, CAST, trying to give pathways for our kids to have after-school programs and everything, and pulling that together is a big thing for me because I know what that does to the brains of those kids. And so I think that's an exciting opportunity. Also, the research park, of which a section of our land is part of, is now gaining some traction and moving ahead, and I'd like to be part of that nurturing process to interface with University of Florida when need be to make sure there is that support with them. Also, there's some movement with the Harbor Branch that is going to serve our kids. We're working with Kaiser to build some pathways.
Wonderful.
And so I have a lot of things on my plate, and not a one of them is boring or dull.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I can't wait to see how those things come to fruition here in this calendar year, and I know they will. You are a problem solver, as I stated before. Is there anything else you want to share with the viewers, just to let them know about you or your goals and dreams and aspirations?
Well, I will tell you, I've been asked several times, so what do you do for yourself. Well, people need to know that this is what I do for myself. Our family has, my spouse especially and I, believe that if we can make any mark on our community in a positive way, that it is our job to do so. Being a Methodist, growing up, you do as much as you can for as many as you can, anywhere you can for as long as you can.
Wow.
So as long as I can, I'm going to do that.
Wonderful. Well, we so appreciate your time today, sharing all of this information, and appreciate your dedication to this school district. It's just a pleasure being able to talk with you today.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, that wraps it up for this special edition of Eye on St. Lucie. Thanks for joining us.